There became a knowing in my head that if everyone goes home safe, if no one's bleeding, it was a successful day. I don't have to judge the day of being successful or of it being productive or of us having done the right thing if only certain number of acres got picked, or if only a certain amount of tonnage, or if only a certain quality of fruit. Those are all great indicators of how we're doing other things. But there are days when it's okay for me to just look at my staff and my helpers and be like, no one's bleeding. Everyone's okay.
Hello, beautiful people. Yes, I am talking to you. Are you ready to feel confident AF, free from the expectations and opinions of others, and create ultimate self-trust in who you are, what you say, and how you show up in every part of your life? If you answered a hell yes, I am, I guarantee this episode will empower you to be 100% yourself, 100% of the time, no shame or guilt needed. It's time for you to strut your stuff, express yourself with freedom, and fully embrace every freaking fabulous part of you. Let's dive in. Hello, my beautiful friends, and welcome to another episode of Road to Radical Visibility. My name is Rachel Freemon Sowers, also known as the Break Free Bitch, because I'm passionate about helping people break free from the toxic social constructs, opinions, and expectations that are keeping them from living their life exactly the way that they want to. And today's episode is obviously going to be another great one because I'm another kick-ass guest, as you can see on the screen here. I'm going to introduce her to you right now. So let me read this introduction because I don't want to miss a thing. Brandi is a 40-something winery owner, environmental chemist, and a civic mayhem maker in far NorCal. So for those of you who don't know, that's like far northern, like Redding, California, way up here. She manages nearly 8 acres of organic estate vines. She continues moving towards her goal of creating a more sustainable and regenerative wines. Years of saying yes to all opportunities has brought her to a place where she can confidently say no to the things that aren't for her. Brandi, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Rachel. I'm glad we could make this happen.
I know. We're not going to lie. We're going to keep it real. We've been dealing with some tech and we're just going to keep on moving forward. So Brandi, as you know, the first question I ask every single one of my guests is, what does radical visibility mean to you?
Yeah. And I've listened to a number of your podcasts. So I heard plenty of speakers, kind of respond to this, and I nodded along and said yes, but I resonated with the consistency of like showing up authentically and showing up as your true self. But I think that there's 2 layers to it. I think that's the very obvious first layer, and like ogres, onions have layers, and here we are. So I think the second layer, to me is standing in the truth of who you are when your truth is not what people want to hear, expect to hear. It's that second part that is the radical part to me. And so, yeah, to me, that's the part that becomes radical. It's standing there, speaking your truth, being true to who you are or authentic to who you are when who you are is not exactly what everyone expects. And that has been a long road for me.
Well, friend, I'm going to say you're in really great company.
Great. Good.
And I really do also, I agree totally with that. Like the radical part is for most people, you showing up as yourself independent of what other people think.
Yeah. And then staying that person is, because I think it's easy to show up one time and say, oh, I don't agree with this, or, I have a different viewpoint on this. And it's showing up that second and third time, and continuing to express that, you come from it at a different viewpoint, or you have a different opinion, and continuing to be true to yourself on down the road.
Yeah. And, knowing too that when that shifts for you, it's fine that is shifting, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's all these times when things change in our lives. And, we were talking before the show when I asked you to be on the show, and you were sharing with me this journey that you've had. So can you tell us a little bit about how you got into winemaking in the first place?
Sure. So I do have a degree in winemaking. It's what I went to school for, but it's not what I started school for. I started knowing that chemistry was going to be the base of anything that I did. I have a big love for the applied sciences, and jumped headfirst into university life with thinking I would be a physical therapist or something chemistry based, and saw a little like table tent at my like dorm, and it was like, oh, become a winemaker, you get a minor in chemistry and you have this applied science degree. And I was just like, I called home very quickly and I was like, I'm changing my degree. It will be wine or it will be nothing. And yeah, it was one of those aha moments. I absolutely knew that was the thing I wanted to do. And then the further that I learned about it, the further that I got into it, I was like, yeah, this is where I make chemistry make sense. And kind of carried on down that road.
So you've been, I don't know whether these are the right words, but you've interned and you've done some stuff for some different wineries. But owning your own winery, has that always been something that you've wanted?
Yeah. So that specifically was a part very, very early on. I knew I wanted to make wine for myself. It came to a head at about like maybe 26 years old. I had worked at wineries in California and in Oregon, and worked for a lot of different types of wineries, from the biggest that exists down to other small boutique wineries like the one I own now. And I knew that if I was going to be in the industry, it was going to be working for myself, not for someone else anymore. Some hard learned lessons that way. And really coming to terms with the fact that I wanted to make wine in a way that I felt good about making wine. And I wasn't doing that working for someone else. And yeah, so I wasn't sure. From point A to point B, I had no clue. I had no clue how to go from working, as an hourly employee at a winery to owning a winery. Not even a guess at how I would get there. And I have a second degree in environmental chemistry, and I went to work doing that and did that for a while, continuing to kind of dabble in the wine industry wherever I went, staying involved in organizations that were doing that. And eventually that meant that I had the access and enough understanding of the local industry when I came back to Reading that when the winery came up for sale, folks reached out to me and said, hey, would you be interested in coming on as our winemaker? And I was like, it honestly depends on what winery you're buying, because the answer is no for all but one of them. And it happened to be that the one winery they were buying was the only local winery I was interested in ever being involved with. So a whole bunch of things changed between that day and when the winery actually sold. And now I sit at the helm of the winery as opposed to being an hourly employee. And yeah, I think everybody's dreams came true. Not the way we thought they would, but all the folks involved got to be involved in the way that was best for them. So yeah, here I am making the wine, owning the winery.
Living the dream. Right.
Some
And
days.
we reach these points in our lives and almost be like, holy crap. Like, I'm actually doing the thing that I wanted to be doing, that I saw myself wanting to do so long ago. Right.
Yeah.
But if we tie in this radical visibility part, what were some of the most, in your view, for yourself, the radical things that you had to do to get to this point? Because it just doesn't happen. I mean, like, I watched this thing with Lizzo, and she's like, I've been doing this for a long time. I've been doing my work for a long time. You have to keep showing up. You have to keep doing it. It doesn't just always fall into your lap. Well, hardly ever. Let's just be real.
Sure. I think for me, continuing to work in the industry, continuing to find ways to engage in the industry when I wasn't an hourly employee for a winery, especially as I moved back to far Northern California, there's not many wineries here. And
Mm-hmm.
so I knew that I was, in moving back here to be near my family, near my friends, in the place that I wanted to be, um, I was risking being able to be involved in that industry because of just like the sheer few numbers of wineries here.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I thought that that would mean I would have to buy land and plant teeny tiny little vines and start from that scratch.
Mm-hmm.
But I spent, and I've shared this with you, I spent a good couple years just saying yes to everything that was offered to me. And that included, when I got back to Reading, being offered a position on a board for the local viticulture association. And I said yes, not
Mm-hmm.
knowing much about the organization, not knowing much about their structure or how engaged they were in local commercial winemaking.
Mm-hmm.
And sort of went from there. I made, today still, I have people from that organization who I served on the board with who still come during harvest and help me and are still, champions for my brand. And it was those early showing up. There was no way to make money working for that organization. It couldn't be about money. It had to be
Right.
about staying involved, and making those connections and knowing that later on down the road, those people and those connections would be the things that helped me navigate.
So a lot of times I hear people say, I just don't know what decisions to make. I don't know what to say yes to. I don't know what to say no to. And your process of saying yes really requires a lot of trust in self because you don't know how it's going to turn out, right?
Sure. And there were some hard lessons learned in
Oh,
in
share
that
with us one hard lesson.
yeah, in that time of saying yes. And I mean, I said yes to everything. It really was a personal choice. I said for the next, initially I said for a year, I'm going to say yes to everything. I said yes to, um, you know, business opportunities. I said yes to community engagement. I said yes to like relationship partners. That was a big bad decision right there, and I certainly learned some things,
Yeah.
but I said yes to things that weren't, obvious yeses. Like maybe people in my life were going, what are you doing? Why are you dating that person? Or why are you getting involved with this organization?
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
you're busy. Why would you do this? But I just kept saying yes. Some of those things I turned away from quickly. Some of those things I dug my heels in and built to be bigger and better. And I stayed with them until the bitter end. And some of those things, we built them so that they would almost self-destruct when they had fulfilled their purpose.
Yeah.
And so I got to build something incredible that still exists here in our community. And then we got to dismantle the parts that were no longer needed. And that was a huge learning point for me, that when we build something, it doesn't mean that we have to build it to last forever. We can build things that are built for a time frame, for a purpose. And once they've served their purpose, we can honor them and thank them and dismantle them and move on. And when you do it that way, you don't carry something on longer than it's meant to be there, longer than it's serving its purpose, longer than it's doing good.
Yeah.
You don't struggle to carry it on any further. And you can move on happily, and you can look back at those things. You can, carry on some of the relationships you built doing that. And I have some of my absolute best friends, the people I vacation with, the people I turn to in my dark moments, are people from those days that, we built stuff together and then we dismantled it when it was done.
So I think
But
that brings in a
most people
really
don't look for
interesting.
that.
Yeah. Well, right. And I think it's hard. I mean, what people become attached. They become attached to
Oh,
this
yeah.
thing. And like, this is what I built.
Yeah.
This is my whole life. This becomes my identity. And of course, as you know, this is what I help people learn to do, is unattach their identity from those things so that you can easily come in and come
Yeah.
out with very little
Yep.
emotional pain and distress, I guess.
Yeah. And it probably helps that I'm not a highly emotional person. So maybe I'm just well prepared to do these things. But yeah, it was a learning curve, because I think we are genuinely, as we grow up, we're just conditioned that, like, if you build something, in order for it to succeed, it has to carry on forever. And so building in a timeline, building in a lifespan for something that's only 10 years or a certain point, was new. But it was a good learning process for me. I had said yes to so much. and knowing that some of those things would naturally go away, and that I didn't have to carry them on. I wasn't responsible for them forever,
Right.
was fantastic. And certainly in the year of saying yes, and it ended up being ultimately more than a year. I kept saying yes to things. But it taught me how to say no, and it taught me how to recognize things that don't serve me, that I don't want to do, that I don't serve, that I don't genuinely serve. And now I'm really good. I'm even good at saying who is and isn't my customer, and being able to say, like, I fire you as a customer of mine, or, staff. I have incredible staff at my winery, and I've never advertised a single open position at my winery since I've owned it. And it's not because I'm just so fun to be around or just because it's wine. It's because, I say yes to people. And then when it's time for them to not be there anymore, we move that direction. And not letting anything have to be forever has been a good learning process for me.
Yeah. I mean, I think so many people listening to the show are going to want to say, like, I want to be able to do that. And it's not necessarily just leaving everything behind, and it's not necessarily becoming attached to everything, right? We always swing this huge pendulum, and it's either we're totally attached or we're totally like, never mind, I don't care. And this is not, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we have to enter in those spaces. And that's not, it's not a happy, fun, enjoyable place to be, constantly swinging from extreme to extreme. And then we wonder why we're so tired, and we wonder why we can't experience life the way that we want to, right? There's this beautiful middle part that we forget is there.
And we probably spend more time in those middle parts than anywhere else. The coming and the going of things, the starting and the stopping of something, those can, not always, but they happen quickly. And that middle time in there where it's not so much the coming and going can be a time to really experience and live in, and then you can honor it and let it go, because you lived that time, you lived that time of yes. And I wouldn't say that I'm always happy to recognize the letting go time. Like I still struggle with that when it's time to say no, sometimes, especially because I'm very protective of like my staff and family and friends. So if it's something that goes against them, I will be quick to say the no. But other times, I might struggle a little. I still do it because I know, it's not a question for me anymore. I know when we've reached no. But I still sometimes am not like super quick to jump in and be like, it's time to say no. It's time to separate.
So I think this brings up another interesting thing that people really struggle with, and that I see them struggle with, is this knowing of the self, right?
Yeah.
You've had numerous experiences, numerous times when you got to see where you wanted to land, how you want to experience your life in different arenas, right? And so that practice, people often ask me, Rachel, just tell me what I can do, and then I can know what to do. But we have to move ourselves through these experiences and allow our bodies to remain calm in the knowing of yes to this thing, no to that thing. This is my truth. This is how I'm being. So what is this is a surprise question, everyone, just FYI. What is like one or two of the things that are your absolute knowings, if that makes sense? Like, what do you know to be true for you that really is like a non-compromising thing for you?
So this is so baseline. It's gonna seem like, no, I wanted something deeper, but there are days, and it's usually harvest for us, where we're working extremely, extremely long hours, and it's hot, and it's so much. And this happened in my second year of owning the winery, but there became a knowing in my head that if everyone goes home safe, if no one's bleeding, it was a successful day. I don't have to judge the day of being successful, or of it being productive, or of us having done the right thing. if only certain number of acres got picked, or if only a certain amount of tonnage, or if only a certain quality of fruit. Those are all great indicators of how we're doing other things. But there are days when it's okay for me to just look at my staff and my helpers and be like, no one's bleeding. Everyone's okay. Like, especially when when we're stressing our bodies to that level, really pushing physically, people are going to snap. People are going to have less than, authentic moments of how they react. And sometimes I have to pull myself all the way back to that base of, I could have, I can look at some things and say, I could have done better in these places today. Or, as a whole, me and my staff could have executed better in these ways. Everyone's safe. No one's bleeding today. Everyone's going home, safe. And that feels so base. That feels so minimum.
Yeah, but I think it's so foundational, though. I mean, if you think about it. It gives me
that calm, too. And sometimes I have to have that. I have to have that to leave, to rest my body, to rest my soul, and to come back and do it again tomorrow. Sometimes if all I can find is that very, very baseline, okay, then that's where I start. And it gives me the opportunity to look for a few wins in the day, to say, and you know what? There was no white fly in the Petite Sirah at all this last year, or we were able to process more Sangiovese this year than we've processed in any year past. It helps me, like if I just draw that very, very bottom line, it helps me then, okay, so we succeeded today. Today was successful. No one bled,
Well, yeah. And you're going back to the simplistic thing, right? You're not having to put all these other things on there. And what really matters to me? What is the thing that matters to me today? And this is the thing that matters. That helps ground you. Like you're saying, it takes you back to that place, and then you're able to see gratitude. So for those of you listening, like, this is a really great tool that you can use, is you can take yourself back to, hey, I woke up today, I went to work today, I was able to work today, and I am here alive, still kicking, and I'm going to be able to continue my life, right? I mean, that can be another person's baseline. Or even absolutely. As an entrepreneur, as you well know, it's very difficult. Entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart.
No.
And all the productive things, all the million list things that you have to get done. Okay, I was able to keep my business here, keep it alive, and loving, knowing that I have a business. That's good enough for me today. I don't have to complete the 200 things on the list and feel like shit about myself.
Right, because you didn't get to an endless list that you weren't going to get to.
Which is endless.
So that's one of the things is like, I find myself relying on that, especially during harvest or especially during like very, very busy times. But it is one. So I will tell you, we had an event this last year, a summer solstice celebration dinner out in the vineyard. It was incredible. It was very, very highly executed. 7 courses, all paired with wine. About 10 minutes before we seated the guests, it started pouring rain in June in Reading. And it was cold and it was windy and we had to scrap the entire thing. And I had to, in a summer solstice dress with like flowers in my hair, I had to jump on the forklift and pick up all the tables and chairs and take them under a canopy so that we could serve dinner there. And I had to do this in front of all the guests. There were 100 guests there ready to have a elegant party. Wow. And I was so close to having a breakdown. Like it was too much. It was so too much. And I just kept going back to everyone's safe. Everyone's okay. No one's bleeding. No one's hurt. Everyone's going to go home. And I had to remind myself of that over and over and over again. And I rarely have to do that outside of harvest. But that was a day that I was so glad I had like that skill or that tool to go back to. It saved my butt a few times.
Well, and you know what? We often call that like an anchor. It's the thing you can return to when there's nothing else, like you're saying. And I seriously want to see a picture of you in the dress on that forklift. Like, that would be a great pick.
I have one. I'll dig it up.
Dig it up and send it to me because I'm putting it on the thumbnail of this video. But it's just like such a beautiful reminder about, we always say, we're resilient, we're resourceful, we're all of these things. And yes, pretty much every single human has those capacities, but it's the choice that you make.
Yeah. And to not just throw your hands up. It gets hard, but that doesn't mean you have to quit. And sometimes we learn so much about ourselves and the people around us and our staff when we don't just say, it's not what I planned, so I'm quitting. Pushing through can be a huge reward. And I'm in that exact example. I'm so glad we did push through. Our customers had an incredible event. I could have done without the whole thing, but they really enjoyed themselves. They from that moment, they have been asking if we'll do another one this year, and we will.
Well, I saw that you were doing one and I was like, dang, I need a ticket. But really, this endears your customers more to you, though. You're showing up purely as yourself in that moment. You're like, let's get it done. Let's get on the forklift. This is important to me. You are important to me. Yeah. And ultimately, you are important to yourself.
So I think it was one of those moments, too, where my staff didn't have the skills to fix it. So, they all turned to me and said, what are you going to do? And there was no way to not do this in front of customers. So it was a moment where that huge number of customers, those 100-something people standing there, witnessed all the range of emotions and then witnessed a woman, not her staff, jump on the forklift, move the heavy equipment, climb up the scaffolding, move the doors, like do the physical labor of putting this back together. And I know at one point with all of them, that's not why I did it. I would have loved to have not had to do any of it. But,
absolutely.
But it certainly cemented to all of them how important their enjoyment of the event was. So we shall solstice again.
Well, so on that note, like, what would you tell the women in particular, the people who have felt like they just maybe have not ever been enough. They just have to, that maybe they felt like they have to keep fighting in this kind of like more aggressive way. What would you tell them if they're about ready to give up on something that is their dream, that is their desire?
So I can think of two things that I would say is, one, when people push back. You don't have to allow yourself to be pushed around. And I don't anymore. When I first took on this business, I got, I bought a business from an 80-something-year-old guy who'd been here his whole life and everybody knew him. I was a 34-year-old woman with, at that time, bright blonde hair and a big smile, a little more seasoned now. And I would say push back when the old grumpy guys would come in and say, what makes you think you can run this place? I would tell them what made me think I could run this place. Yes. I didn't allow them to push me. I would say my education, my experience, and the fact that I paid for the place. That's what. So I would say push back. Always push back. You don't have to be as like maybe gruff as I would be about it, but like push back. Don't allow them just to push you into the corner. Push back. And the second thing I would say is know that the struggle of pushing through, there will be wins that you didn't even know were there along the way. And look for those and celebrate them. If you're a solopreneur, find your family, find your friends, find your people, your tribe, and celebrate with them. But celebrate those small wins along the way, because I can think of the struggles 5 years ago that the things that were weighing on my mind at night. And those aren't even worries that I have about the winery today. So there are wins along the way that need to be celebrated. They need to be identified, because one day those won't be struggles for you anymore. And so make sure you're noting them. Make sure that you can look back and say, this was a big win and that was a hard thing that we don't have to overcome anymore. But yeah, look for the people that are going to celebrate you too.
Yeah, that's a huge, that's huge for anyone in general, but especially when you start surrounding yourself with people. And I think that even goes all the way back to the beginning, where it's like, know when it's time to end something, know when it's time to say no to something, when it's time to say yes to something. And I mean, this has been such a beautiful journey to listen to you and to see you go on, because it inspires so many other people too, right?
Great. Yeah, I hope so.
Well, it will, that's for sure. And I just want to encourage all of you, Brandi has talked about pushing back, and she's talked about noticing those wins and taking those moments out. We're not taught to do that. And especially as women and people in marginalized communities, we're taught that when we push back, we're aggressive, we're bitches, we're non-conforming, we're trouble, we cause issues, and we need to rid ourselves and other people in our own communities of that whole stigma, because it is not true. I had a client say to me the other day, she's like, Rachel, this professional emailed her these 2 options. And she said, I started to freak out a minute. And then she said, I remember I have a choice. She said, I have a choice to say yes or no to this. And that, it makes my heart so happy and gives me goosebumps. I just want to thank you so much, Brandi, for being here and telling your story, sharing your self with us, being vulnerable. And I just want to say thanks so much.
Thank you, Rachel. Thanks for having me. Thanks for letting me, tell my story and share. I hope that there are women who need to hear it and that are buoyed by hearing it.
So you've heard it. If you have been inspired, please make sure you can feel free to direct message me. You can put it in the comments below on the YouTube channel. We would love to hear from you. I'll make sure to pass on any messages to Brandi that you leave. And I'll go ahead and end this video like I end every single video. Please make sure to stay true to yourself, be kind to others, and always, always, always honor the wise one that is within you. We will see you all on the next road to radical visibility. Until then, bye. Hold up, don't go yet. If this episode inspired you to be 100% yourself, 100% of the time, no shame or guilt needed, even just that little bit more, I would love to hear from you in the comments below. I'm here, and I know you are too, to make a positive impact in the world. So don't forget to share the love. And if you were left wanting more of this type of kick-ass content, then don't forget to click the like and subscribe button. Until next time, make sure to stay true and be you. Until then, bye.